Hi guys, I just want to spend some time talking today about Yin Yoga. I know a lot of you are familiar with it. I've been giving you more flows and just talking about it more lately. Also, a lot of you have been doing Ramwad for quite a long time, and that is Yin Yoga. So, since a lot of you have come to Yin Yoga from a gym side, or even just having a Type A personality as someone who's competitive, the result has been that I think a lot of people are doing Yin poses, but they're not doing them in a Yin way. And that means we're not really doing Yin. So today I'm going to talk through 7 principles that I think will help you guys get more from your Yin practice. So first one I want to talk about is that time is more important than intensity. Just like when we're training, volume is more important than intensity. When we get into individual Yin poses, holding it for a long period of time is more important than how spicy or how electric it feels. So if we're coming into a pose, that means that when we start, we should be in a position like, oh yeah, I could hold this for 5 minutes. If we get in and it's kind of excruciating, you're like, this is going to be a struggle to hold for 1 or 2, then it's not Yin. You're working much too hard. So when we come into a pose, think about a 5 to a 7 out of 10 in terms of discomfort. Allow yourself to settle into it, and as you loosen into that stretch, you'll go deeper. If we're too spicy too soon, our muscles are going to be working too hard to kind of protect themselves. They're going to counter contract. If we're actually relaxed, then we give the muscles the time to release. Second one is that I just want you guys to make sure that you're comfortable, and that goes from what you're wearing, the setting that you're in, the music, the lighting, what have you. I think a lot of times when people do yoga, they think they need to look like a Lululemon model or an Instagram model, but that's not the case. You can do yoga in sweats, socks, and a comfy shirt. So doesn't have to. I actually even recommend that you don't wear very tight clothing. We want to be loose. We want to let the blood flow. We don't want any restriction in our body. Cool. So next one is that nobody else has your biography or your biology, meaning you're unique as F, right? So when we're coming into these poses, I'm much more concerned with how the pose feels than how the pose looks. If we're always going to try to look like the perfect demo model, we're not really serving ourselves. So when we come in, don't worry about what you look. That's why Yin's usually best practiced with your eyes closed the whole time. The next point's kind of 3 in 1. It's the 3 tenets of Yin, or the 3 principles of Yin, from one of the founders of Yin, and it's pretty simple. So the first one is that we come into the pose at the appropriate depth, like I spoke about earlier. That means that we're coming into a comfortable place and then allowing that discomfort to grow as we move through. The next one is that after we come into that pose, we want to become still. So if we've come into that pose too aggressively off the start, and it requires us to shift around a lot to reduce the pain as we go through, we're not doing Yin again. So once we find that pose, try to stay as still as you can and also as relaxed as you can. It's much better to be in a position to think, oh, I might be able to fall asleep here, than how am I going to do this for another 3 minutes. The last one is that we hold for time, which I've kind of already touched on. We settle in, we become still, and then we hold for anywhere from 3 to 9 minutes, maybe longer, in that pose. The next one is super important for you CrossFitters and gym folks, is that we need to use supports. So blocks, bolsters, pillows, blankets, foam rollers even. Whatever we can use to support our frame is going to really help us out, because it's going to allow us to become more relaxed and allow our muscles to be more relaxed. So for me, in some poses, I need like 2 or 3 blocks, maybe 4, a bolster to support my chest, and stack my knuckles to support my head. So if you're in a pose and you're having to do a lot of work to stay there, and it's not the right pose for you, or you're not using enough support. So don't be shy. You're not being like weak or not intense if you don't use support, or if you use supports. I'd much rather you be in a position where you think you could fall asleep than where you're struggling. Kind of along with that, and the next point is that if you're straining, you're not doing Yin. So if in a pose and I'm holding it and that's causing my breath rate to increase, or maybe tense up and hold my breath, or even if I get like a pain face, then we're not doing Yin, right? So we want to make sure that we're comfortable and we're in a depth that's not like super aggressive. So that's kind of a good way to know and self-regulate, is if you're into that pose and you're like straining, holding your breath, breathing too heavy, or screwing your face up, back off, take it a little more easy. The last thing I want to talk about is compression and tension. So when we're doing stretching, there's 2 kind of things that we can run into, is compression in a joint or tension in a muscle. So if I'm talking about compression, that would be if I'm bending my arm in, and my biceps are so big, I wish they were, that I get stuck here. It's like, where am I going? Well, nowhere. I'm getting compression here. It's muscle pinching muscle and bone outside of that pinching the muscle in. I'm not really going to get anywhere past this unless I get rid of my bicep. So that's compression. If we're feeling compression in a pose or a squat or any kind of movement, unfortunately that means we're likely not going to get far past that movement. So when you in terms of like self-selecting how deep we should go into poses or exercises, compression's one where we can't really fight that. That's generally because of your hip structure or just the way your muscles are at this time. So something like a squat, for feeling compression in our hips, it may not be appropriate for you to squat below parallel for your entire lifting career, despite what someone in California might tell you their standard is. Tension is something that we're all a little more familiar with because we feel it all the time since we have tight and strong muscles. So if I'm doing that same motion, but I've done a lot of pressing in my day and I'm getting a stretch feeling in here or some fiery feeling on the back side of my muscle, that's going to be tension. That means that my muscle is too tight and it's not allowing myself to hit my full range of motion. So if we're doing a pose or an exercise and we feel tension, that's kind of good news, because that means that we can just put up with the discomfort, work through that, stretch 3 times a week, and over time we're going to improve our range of motion in that pose. Okay? So those are kind of the basic principles I want you to think about when you go into your flows or your yin practices. And if you have any extra questions, guys, just shoot me a message. I would be happy to dig into it more with you. All right. So if I could bring it all into one, all I would say is try less hard. Simple as that. All right. Have a good day, guys.